Okay, hello everyone. Thank you for joining us today. I'm Lisa Twilley, the director of the Women's Business Center at Maryland Capital Enterprises. Just to give you some information about us, we're a nonprofit based here in Salisbury. We also have an office in Baltimore, and we do business consulting, marketing consulting, free training workshops such as this. We also do small business loans, and all of our services are free, especially if you're based in Maryland. We cover all the Eastern Shore of Maryland, Baltimore City, Baltimore County, and Anne Arundel County. So if we can be of any assistance to you guys at all, please let me know. I'm going to put my contact information in the chat. And today we have Rosalind Davis here from Rhoda Business Solutions, and she is going to tell us more about MBE Part 2.
All right, Lisa, thank you so much. I am going to share my screen. Hopefully everyone can see it.
Looks good.
Okay. Let's try and do now let me get my screen back so I can see it. So thank you everyone for joining us, and those who joined us for part one, welcome back. And for those who are just joining us today, the recording for part one is on the Maryland Capital Enterprise Women Business Center website. So when you get the email with the recording from today, you'll also see the part one. The slides are not shared, just a recording. So just kind of keep that in mind. And I appreciate everyone joining us today. So I'm going to go into presentation mode. There we go. So this is the agenda for part two, and I'm going to just do a recap of part one. So in part one, it was more about asking the questions about your company, about who manages the company, your financials, and it was more about questions. And in there were mandatory questions. There were optional questions. And so we went over the difference between the two. So part two goes more into providing those supporting documentations and or information to support your answers in part one. We're also going to go into more detail about the ACDBE, which is the Airport Concession Disadvantaged Business Enterprise Certification. We're going to go through some required documents. We're going to go into a deep dive about the document list for your certification, because there are mandatory documents, and then there's a list of documents if they apply to your business. And then a key takeaway and some conclusions at the end. And so I am going to go off camera because I want you to focus on the slides and the content and not necessarily me talking. So this is what section 1 through 4 looks like once you have completed all actions. And so it's sort of a visual color coding to say you have completed these particular sections, and they're all marked in green. If you're still had some sections within 1 through 4 that were not complete, it would be marked in red. So that's sort of a visual representation to show where you're at in completing your application. And until all sections are marked in green, you will not be able to submit your application, and you will not be able to sign it to submit it for review and approval. So airport concession, again, ACDBE. So in part one, we went through most of the minority business, disadvantage, and small business enterprise certification, but then there's the airport concession DBE, and there's 5 required sections that you have to complete. And here's what it's asking you for the airport concession. So you'll see some questions here that were covered during part one, but here's the questions again. It's asking Are you applying for it? And do you own or operate any off-port locations? So you just go through and answer these particular questions, and if applicable, you would need to submit supporting documentation if you do have affiliates or joint ventures, um, or if you already own or operate some airport concessions. Now, I'm going to do a deep dive into the required documents because this is the meat and potatoes of part 2 of this training. So listed here is the documents that are required. These are all mandatory and they must be uploaded in your application. And I will also go over if there's an instance where perhaps where it asks for 3 years or no, let's say 5 years of business federal tax return, but you've only been in business part-time, let's say only for 3 years, I will go through how do you get around showing that you've only been in business for 3 years, although they're asking for 5 years of business federal tax returns. So moving down the line, the first one is the affidavit of certification. This is a form that's provided inside the application where it must be notarized. So you need to get that form notarized to certify that you are in fact a disadvantaged or minority business enterprise. State business registration documents. This is where you would need to show proof, and you can use, if you're in Maryland, the SDAT certification of good standing. You can also show your registration in Maryland, uh, but some type of state business registration documents to show that you are a valid business and you are a business in good standing. So resumes. So in part 1, it asked you about who does the day-to-day operations of the company and any other people that are associated with the headquarters level of your organization. In part 2, it's now asking you to upload the resumes to support your answers in part 1. So if you are a sole proprietor where you are the daily managing owner, you also do the financials, you also do human resources. If you are all of those and above, you just have to submit your resume on yourself. But if there's other people in your company that are providing, I want to say headquarters functions, then you would need to show their resumes as well. Now in part 1, I went through a little detail about some key words and phrases that need to be in your resume. So go back and look at the recording for part 1 that talks about what are those key words that need to be in your resume. And then you also need to provide proof of citizenship. So to show that you are a US citizen and that you are a business owner in the US. Your personal net worth statement. I'm going to go through this in more detail, but it is another form that needs to be notarized. In part 1, I talked about there's a question that asks you what is your personal net worth, and to enter a number, and it's a fictitious number if you don't already have your personal net worth statement completed, because the number that you put on the personal net worth statement form and get notarized, it needs to match a question that was answered during the part 1 of the training workshop. And then you also need 3 years of your personal federal tax return. So we all should have at least the personal federal tax returns, but where we may fall short is the 5 years of business federal tax returns. So for instance, as I stated, if you've only been in business 3 years and you don't have the total of 5 years, what you do to get around this is perhaps you would create a Word document, and that Word document would have your application number, the name of your business, and just a quick statement that says this particular year is not applicable because you've only been in business since whatever that might be. And then just sign and date it. And then you're going to take that form and upload it into the application. Now, you need to do that for each year. So it needs to be an individual document that you upload for each year that does not apply if that's the case. And then your 3 years of year-end financial statements. And so this does not have to be from a CPA firm or a financial planner. This could be an Excel spreadsheet, but you do need to provide 3 years of year-end financial statements. And then the next document is the bank signature authorization form or letter. So on this form or letter, it needs to have your business name. And more importantly, it needs to say who is authorized to sign checks on behalf of the company. And then your vehicle title or registration and insurance information if it's used for business. So if you have a personal vehicle, but you also use it for business purposes, you need to upload your vehicle title and or lien and your registration and insurance information if you use your POV for business as well. And then licenses and contracts. So the licenses that they're referring to is trade licenses, for instance, electrician or plumbers or things like that. Contracts is asking for your top 3 contracts that you have performed work on. So again, this is a list of the required documents that must be uploaded in your application. Lisa, I'm going to pause right there and see if we have any questions.
I see one, it says bank signature. You said should be on the business letterhead.
No, it needs to be on the bank letterhead.
Okay.
Yes. Because you can ask your bank for this signature authorization. It could be a form or it could be a letter. But in that form or letter, it needs to state the business name and also who's authorized to sign on behalf of the company.
Okay.
And it's a pretty standard form or letter that banking institutions are familiar with. Any other questions?
That was
Okay.
all in the chat.
All right. Thanks.
Oh,
And
here we go. Here we go.
Okay.
For resumes, does that include any 1099 staff that may be doing daily operations work?
If you use them on a reoccurring basis and they're part of, let's say, your company, then yes. But if they are doing part-time work for you as a 1099, for example, if they do like your website development or they do HR, but they are a third party HR company, then no.
Okay.
All right.
Yep,
So,
that's it.
all right. Document list mandatory. So here is a screenshot of what it will look like in the application itself. So we just went through these documents. For instance, the affidavit certification for disadvantaged business enterprise. It will show you over here that it's not attached. Once you attach it, then it will turn to green and show that it's attached. If you want to make sure, you always want to make sure that you have the current version of the document. So I recommend that you download right here from the website to ensure that you have the most recent version of the document. And it's especially important on your personal net worth statement because the personal net worth statement now for 2025, it's for minority business enterprise is 2.136 million. So you want to make sure that you are using the most appropriate and current document that you complete, but also that you get notarized. We talked about your business tax returns and your personal tax returns. Now, most people do electronic signatures on their tax returns. That's not acceptable here in the application. What you have to do is the page where you actually could put a wet signature, you must print that put a wet signature on it, and then attach that along with the rest of your tax return. Electronic signatures are not acceptable. So please make note that you do need a wet signature on all of your tax returns. And then the proof of good standing status with SStat, that is for Maryland businesses to show that you have paid your annual business fee for the year and that you are in good standing. And then identification documents, again, that's your proof of citizenship. And then the bank authorization, we went through that. Proof of contributions. And so this is if you have contributed to your company, let's say you contributed $20,000 from your personal funds to your business, then some type of documentation to show that on this day you contributed this amount of money to invest in your business. But if it's only been like $1,000 or $500, and it was more of buying supplies, then that doesn't qualify. They're looking for larger dollar amounts where you may have invested equipment or a vehicle or large sums of cash. And you have to provide receipts or cancel checks as proof. And the resumes for all owners. So that question again about the resumes, you're looking for owners and your officers of the firm or key personnel. So again, it's key personnel. So if that 1099 individual is a key personnel of your company, then yes, you will need to upload their resume as well. And year-end financial statements, you need 3 years. Articles of organization. So it must be the one that is signed by your state official. And original or amended operating agreements. This is another document that you needed when you apply for a Maryland business. So you should already have that. And then the profit sharing agreement. If that doesn't apply to you, then again, create, I'm going to say a Word document or a Google document. Put your company name, put your application number, and state why a profit sharing agreement, for example, does not apply. Because perhaps you're not a corporation or because you don't have profit sharing within your company. But you have to upload some type of reason why it does not apply. Any questions on that, Lisa?
I don't see any questions.
All right. So here is what the affidavit of certification for DBE looks like. You must put your full name and your title and then declare which one of these or more of these boxes apply to you. And then you must sign it in front of a notary. Once you have that notarized document, you will come back and you would upload that into your application. Personal net worth. I highly recommend that you download the form from the website and read through it first before you start to complete the information. Because, for instance, when it comes to your home, you don't enter that information here on as part of the assets that you own, but you still identify that you have a real estate, whether that's your home residence or it's vacation property or something. But this document goes into great detail as to what is entered and where at on the worksheet you should get that dollar figure from. I will tell you that you would think that these numbers would automatically add and give you a total assets dollar amount, but it does not. So I highly recommend that you manually do the addition and ensure that this number is correct. And the same thing with your liabilities. And then you will subtract your liabilities from your assets to get your personal net worth. Again, this form must be notarized and then uploaded back into your application. This number here that's circled on the form is the same number that must match in section 1 of your application. I'm going to pause right there, Lisa, and see if there's any questions on the personal net worth statement.
There's no questions in the chat.
Okay. So your business and personal taxes. Again, I have X'd out the e-file signature because you do need a wet signature on your Form 1040 or applicable form. Going into more detail about the mandatory documents, your proof of good standing. You can go to Maryland Business Express. You can do a search on your business and it'll pull up all the documents that you have either entered and or applied to your business when it comes to Maryland businesses. There's the link there in the slide deck, and there is a fee for the copies. So there is a fee of $20 for the certificate itself, but then there's also an additional $20 fee if you need that expedited. There's no way getting around that $40 fee. The expedited just means that as soon as you apply and it's been verified that you're in good standing, you can download your certificate within a matter of minutes. There's no other way around not paying that $20 expedited fee. And this is what a certificate of good standing will look like. And again, where it says immediate email delivery, you say yes, that's that $20, and you will be able to download your certificate so it is available for upload immediately. Some other mandatory documentation. Here's some recommendations on what you can use to show as proof of residence: your passport, your birth certificate, driver's license, and other forms of government issue ID. Mandatory documents. The bank authorization form. Again, this is a standard form or letter that banking institutions are used to providing. Or it could be a signature card. It could be a canceled check with your business address, but it must have your bank name, your business name, and the person who's authorized to sign must be on one of these forms. More mandatory documents, your proof of contributions. This could be your state business registration receipt. For instance, if you're in Maryland and you've paid that $300 to be a registered business, that's a form of receipt. Your good standing certificate is another form. If you've purchased a domain name for your company, that's a form of receipt. Or if you use an accounting system for your bookkeeping or your EIN letter, these are just examples of proof of contributions that you are in fact a valid business. Resumes. Again, you want to make sure that your key personnel, the owners and officers of the business, that you provide the resumes for those individuals. You need to make sure that in part one, when I talked about there's some key language that says that you manage the day-to-day operations, you provide the strategic planning. There's specific language that you must have included in your resume. Otherwise, they may question what is your role. And then if you list any North American Industry Classification Codes or NAICS codes, for instance, if you say you provide staffing services and that NAICS code is 561110, in your resume, you need to talk about how you gain that experience and where have you provided that particular service. So keep that in mind when you provide your resume, because it will probably need to be updated to include the language that they're looking for in the Mbe.Dbe application, along with where did you gain your experience for the services that you're saying you offer. Any questions so far, Lisa?
We do. So for the personal net worth, does that include commercial property, although the commercial property is owned by the business?
The commercial property is owned by the business that is submitting the application?
Mm.
Yes.
Yes, then yes. Because it's asking for real estate. And it's the real estate of the business owner that's submitting the application.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
That's the only one.
Okay. All right, year-end financial statements. Again, these do not have to be from a CPA firm. These can be spreadsheets or they could be something out of your bookkeeping system, whichever you choose. But you need your balance sheet, you need your profit and loss statement. Uh, and if you have audited financial statements, that's helpful. But if you don't submit it. Articles of organization. There are articles and organizations that you have submitted to perhaps to Maryland as part of starting your business. In your articles of organization or your amended articles of organization, it needs to have the name and the principal place of business, your company purpose, who manages the company, and then how do you maintain your books, your records, and your tax returns? That could be as simple that, hey, we use this type of software to maintain our books and we keep our records online or in the cloud, and our tax returns are also there as well. And then how would you dissolve or liquidate your business if it should come to that point? So it could be just as simple as a 2 or 3 page document with this type of information. There's examples that you can find online. I don't recommend that you pay someone to create this document because there's so many free examples that are available. And Lisa, I want to take a pause and back up to something that I should have said at the beginning, and that is that the views and opinion are those of myself, and there are no ways views of the government or any other entity in this presentation. So. Profit sharing agreement. Again, it says it's a mandatory document, but if this does not apply to your company, you would just create a separate document, whether that's Word, Google Sheets, or whatever form of documentation that you use. Put your company name, put your application, but the reason why it doesn't apply, because you just don't use profit sharing agreement. You don't have profit sharing in your company. Sign and date it, and then that is what you would upload into the application. Now there's a whole set of list of documents that if it applies to your company. Now on this screen, you'll see where I've put in red some information. For instance, it says marked as not applicable. So let's kind of go down through here and let's just say you don't have any licenses and permits. And so it's looking again for trade licenses or permits to operate a daycare, that type of information. If that doesn't apply to you, you would check that box. If you don't have any employees, so you don't have to report any quarterly unemployment tax wage, again, you would check that box. You would just kind of go through this list beforehand and see which ones that don't apply to you. And you would check the box. And then at the bottom here, you would click lock in. What will happen is anything that doesn't apply to you, it will now say, instead of saying not attached over here to the right, it'll say not applicable. So that way, when you go back and look at your application and see where there's either green where you have completed a section or it's red because you have not, that's that digital representation to show that there's an item that you still need to complete or it has been completed. So this is a great way to eliminate documents that don't apply to your business, but that's only in this if applicable section. And I'm gonna pause right there, Lisa, to see if there's any questions. Okay.
Oh, could you hear me? I'm sorry, I forgot to hit unmute.
No worries. Go ahead.
There's nothing in the chat.
Okay. All right. So again, the if applicable, I just went through the licenses and permits and the quarterly. So these are just some examples of documents that perhaps don't apply to your business. Now, equipment and or vehicles that are owned and leased by your company. So for instance, the first question, and this is the question that was in part one of the training workshop, and it's part of section one of your application. It says, indicate your firm's inventory, equipment, and vehicles. What it's asking for is equipment or vehicles that belong to the company. For instance, if you have a tow truck with your company name or a bread truck with your company name or some type of equipment, such as a crane operator, that's the type of equipment and vehicles it's looking for in this particular question. Profit sharing, we talked about it. And then if you have any storage space here on question 4C3, such as a warehouse or something like that, you would indicate that here in this application. Current licenses and permits, you would click not applicable, or if yes, then you would enter that permit holder and the license and permit number and when it expired. And this is a question that came out of part one of the training. And then the 3 contracts. You're going to now, if you have contracts, you're going to upload those contracts. And then in your application, here's just another list of if applicable documents. Again, if they don't apply, you want to check that box and then lock it in on the application, and it will show that those documents don't apply. So trust agreements, a business plan. If you have a business plan, but your business plan is complete, I recommend that you don't upload it because that could be a flag that could hold up your application. Meeting minutes, if you are the sole owner of your business and you are perhaps the own employee, you may not have meeting minutes. So again, it's if applicable. So if it doesn't apply, just check the box that it doesn't apply. Same with joint ventures and then any other additional supporting documents that's not listed above. So back to the visual representation to show. Now here's section 1 through 4. Then also down here at the bottom, the document list is now in green to show that you have completed 13 of the mandatory documents and then 10 of the applicable and not applicable, so on and so forth. So when your screen looks like this, all in green that you have completed these actions, now you can sign and submit your application. So I'm going to pause right there, Lisa, to see if there's any questions. One thing I want to point out is once you submit your application, it will take perhaps 4 to 6 months. They now offer a cursory review. So when you go to apply, you'll see down at the bottom of their screen where if you want someone from their office to review your application, but it must be completed. To review your application, do like a 30-minute review of it and give you some feedback. That is free for them to do. I highly recommend it. It's something that they now offer. But keep in mind, it is a 4-step process. So you submit your application, they do the review, they perhaps may do a site visit to provide proof that you are a valid business. It could be virtual or it could be in person, and then they make a decision. So again, 4 to 6 months on average for them to provide a decision on your application.
Okay, so we have one question. It says, you said don't upload the business plan.
I'm saying if you do not have a completed business plan, My recommendation is don't upload it. You're giving the
Okay.
reviewer more information to look at.
Okay. Okay. And then that answers the next question. They just said, is the business plan completed? Do you recommend uploading? So yeah.
Yeah.
Okay.
But again, the views of this training workshop are the views of myself.
Right.
Read the question, and it's a if applicable document, but it also says if you've been in business for less than 3 years, then it's optional. So why give the reviewer more information to look at and scrutinize if it's optional?
Gotcha.
All right, key takeaways and conclusions. So one thing I always like to stress is applying for the certification. It is free. So you do not have to pay someone to complete your application for you. It is time consuming. It does take quite a bit of time to collect those documents, but I highly recommend that you uh, maybe save a space on your desktop where you collect all those documents, because you will continue to use those over and over for other certifications that you may be pursuing. For MDOT, they have a uniform certification application. That means instead of applying for just your minority business enterprise, and then let's say 6 months later applying for your small business enterprise, you can apply for all the certifications at one time. So that is very convenient because all the information is practically the same. So you might as well go for all 2, 3, 4 at a time that applies to your business. I walked through the 4-step process, required information and documents. Again, the color coding on their system will tell you if a document is required. Yellow is optional, and then green is that you have completed that information and or document. The personal net worth statement. This is the part where in section 4 of the application, it asks for the majority owner information. You want to make sure that that dollar figure that you put right there in that answer, in that question, it matches that personal net worth that you put on the form that is now notarized. It is so important that those two numbers match, because that is a quick way to get your application returned. And then I highly recommend that you keep a copy of your completed application, because if they have any questions, you want to have easy access to refer to it, so that you can answer their questions and keep your application moving. Now, the Maryland Capital Enterprise Women Business Center, Lisa mentioned at the beginning that if you need one-on-one assistance, that you can go through their office to request such services. And with that, Lisa, I will pause to take questions.
I think we're good. We had one, but then you ended up answering it right after he sent it. So if
Okay.
anybody else has any questions, you can either unmute.
Well, I want to thank everyone again for taking time to sit for this training workshop. Again, part 1 was done on the 14th. That recording should be on the Maryland Capital Enterprise Women Business Center website, and then today's recording will be as well. I highly recommend, if you're not already connected with me on LinkedIn, that you do so, so you can be the first to know about upcoming training workshops that are provided by the Maryland Capital Enterprise Women Business Center, along with following Lisa Twilley on LinkedIn as well.
Thank you so much, Rosalind. We appreciate all your knowledge and sharing it with us today. I just also want to mention she has another class coming up with us in February, and that's cm.gov. So if you're going to be doing any kind of contracting, I would definitely recommend being on that class as well. I believe it is, let me see, hold on. It's the 18th, February 18th from 12 to 1. So if you'd like to go onto our website and register for that. Also, we have our annual Women's Business Centers Conference coming up March 14th. It's from 9 to 3, and it's an all-day event at the Civic Center. So if you guys are in Salisbury or you feel like making the ride over for the day, hopefully you can come and join us. And we have information about that on our website as well. So you can either go to marylandcapital.org or Women's Business Center at marylandcapitalenterprises.org to find out some more information about that. Lots of thank yous on here.
Oh, thank you.
So, well, thank you guys for joining us. And thank you again, Roz. We appreciate you and your time.
You're very welcome. Thank you, everyone, for joining. Have a great rest of your day.
You too.
Bye.